Welcome on in, guys. It is playoff time. It is an amazing time here in Raleigh for our hometown team, the Carolina Hurricanes. The NHL playoffs, they're right here. They are right now. And guess what? We got our guys, Pat Welter and Brian Murphy, to sit down to talk to you guys everything you need to know. If you're better, if you're just a casual viewer, everything you need to know about the Carolina Hurricanes, what the expectations are for this playoff team, and also, can they bring the Stanley Cup home? We answer all that here. Here's that conversation.
The playoffs are here. Pat Welter here with Brian Murphy, WRAL. We're trading in our March Madness for a little NHL playoffs, Murph. And 8 straight playoff appearances for the Carolina Hurricanes. That's old hat. I guess winning the division is old hat as well. Winning the conference regular season, something new. First time in franchise history. And maybe the second Stanley Cup in franchise history. Is this the year? I think that's the big question everyone has going into these playoffs.
Yeah, that's been the question for a long time for this team, right? 8 straight playoff appearances. Ever since Tom Dundon took over, this team has been a consistent playoff contender and has made deep runs, but hasn't been able to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. And when you look at the path, you look at the health of the team, you look at the overall talent that they've accumulated, I think it's fair to ask, is this the year? And fair to think, if you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, yes, this is the year.
Well, there's been a variety of reasons why the Hurricanes have not broken through, and it's all relative, right? Like, for the Hurricanes fans out there that are like, if they don't win the Stanley Cup, Rod Brind'Amour's got to go. I mean, come on. Right. Like, I mean, there's reasons for each one of these, and a lot of it is, like, as good as the Hurricanes have been, they've run into a team that's just been a little bit better. Florida Panthers, mainly, who've won the Cup twice in the last 3 years, been to the Cup a third time as well, lost to Vegas the year they beat Carolina in the Eastern Conference Final. And also your New York Rangers. So there's no Rangers, there's no Igor Shesterkin, there's no Sergei Bobrovsky. It all lines up, at least as far as like the bracket, to break their way.
Yeah, 5 teams in the Eastern Conference scored over had more than 100 points this year. The Hurricanes at 113 led the conference. Then you got Buffalo at 108, Tampa Bay at 106, Montreal at 106, and Boston at 100. Guess what? All 4 of those teams have to play each other in the first round and the second round. Carolina doesn't have to get past 2 of them. They've only got to get past 1 of them. If they can make it to the Eastern Conference Final, one of those 4 teams will be waiting for them. But that's it. They've only got to get through 1 of them. Those teams all have to get through each other.
Yeah.
They've got to get through 2 of them. I know Tampa and Buffalo, I think, have really stood out this year. But, Tampa's got to play Montreal, who has 106 points in the first round before they even get to Buffalo. So, when you look at the bracket and maybe break in their way, that's one thing you can certainly point to.
So they're going to play Ottawa in the first round. That's locked in. At the time of this recording, we don't know when. And, Brind'Amour the other night was very complimentary of Ottawa. He's been throughout this season. And I think they're a team that doesn't necessarily have like a ton of cachet nationally, right? It's a Canadian team. It's not Toronto. It's not Montreal.
We don't know the TV schedule, but I imagine Carolina, Ottawa, for as good as these teams are, is going to get backbenched when it comes to TV. Would you rather show Pittsburgh against Philly, Buffalo against Boston, or Raleigh versus Ottawa?
So cue up the national media hate for the Hurricanes.
Already. I've heard it already.
Their style, their play, the market. There's nothing to do in Raleigh. Whatever. I mean, Bull Novo Center. We'll just wait till the New York media. Well, they're probably not going to come here, but I'll cue up the different national media that have to come here and be frustrated by what this year's going to be the construction.
And a smaller press box this year. They are stealing some of the press box seats. Maybe not this year, but eventually they're going to take some of those press box seats, which aren't filled throughout the year. But if you get to an Eastern Conference Final or a Stanley Cup Final, those seats will all be occupied. So yes, we will have to hear. We're already hearing. I watched the podcast the other day. Rod Brind'Amour needs to leave. He needs to get to a different market, come coach a Canadian team, and lead them to glory.
Look, I mean, I think there's one of the coaches had a famous quote about the shelf life on coaches. Like, at a certain point, you do need to move on. We have not reached that here.
No, they want him to leave because they think Raleigh's a terrible place for him to be, that he should be somewhere.
Oh, some big market in Toronto or something. Yeah,
bigger, flashier, get more credit for what he's doing. They don't think he needs to leave because he's doing a bad job. They want him in their city.
Well, look, it's probably a different podcast, but before he signed his contract extension, Dundon kind of took that took that to the wall when they were transitioning GMs as well at the time. That was 2 years ago. But Rod, he's got his family here. He loves it here. His son's in the organization. There's a reason he's here and he stayed. And there's a reason they made the playoffs 8 straight seasons. And there's a reason we're saying this might be the year, because things have may have not started that way when you have Jacob Slavin injured. I still remember being at the first training camp day, and everybody's out on the ice, and you're looking out there, and Jacob Slavin conspicuously missing. And then he pokes his head out of the locker room at Invisalign, and I'm right there. And he sees me. I poke out my camera. He goes, "Oh, no." I'm like, "Hey, sorry, I'll put it down. I don't need to blow up your spot." Well, little did I know that ended up being more of a serious injury, kept him out for a good chunk of the start of the season.
He missed more than half of the season. He played in less than half of the games this year. And Carolina still won the Eastern Conference.
And he played in the Olympics.
Right.
As well. So that's a kind of a weird factor. But yeah, we had the injuries to start the year, basically, with Slavin. And then Jarvis has this crazy, slide into the goalpost against Florida, kind of a dirty play. And Jarvis, what was it? Was it last year or the year before he admitted that he'd been playing with a torn labrum for most of the season? This guy's had a lot of injuries. But
he made it to the Olympics, which was one of his giant goals. And he got added to that Canadian team late, the gold medal runner-up, I guess, the silver medalist.
Yeah, let's not sleep on Team USA over here. But, I say all that to say they're healthy now.
Right.
Which is the most important thing, and that hasn't always been the case at some of these other postseason runs.
Yeah, I mean, last year, me and you were playing defense. I think by the end of that, by the end of that run, they had to patchwork an entire defense. Remember is Nikisha going to make it from Russia? Is he going to be able to get his passport in time? His visa? Remember all that talk in last year's postseason, and then suddenly he was playing a top 6 role on their defense because they had so many injuries. You talked about all the injuries before the season, but now they're actually pretty healthy. They were able to play a bunch of AHL guys down the stretch because they had locked up the division, and those guys played great. They kept winning games down the stretch, 6 of their last 8. But their guys should be rested. Their main guys, the core, should be rested, healthy, ready to go. Now we'll see. Obviously, playoff hockey is different. Guys get hurt a lot, but going into the playoffs, and we'll talk about goalie, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah.
Outside of goalie, you got to feel great about this roster, where it is, what it's done this season, what it's been able to accomplish, the individual seasons guys have had, and where they stand going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, the Hurricanes are a juggernaut, and we joked about the national media. Carolina typically gets a lot of respect from Vegas and the analytics because the numbers don't lie. Carolina is second in the NHL with 3.55 goals per game, second only to the Colorado Avalanche, who's been by far the best team in the league. If not for the Avalanche, Carolina would be the best team in the league because they are 4th in power play percentage, which has been a little bit of an Achilles heel for Brind'Amour. But this year, it's been great, at least in the regular season. The penalty kill, 11th. And their defense and their goaltending has been strong, 5th in goals against average. Now, the goaltending was really strong. How is it right now is maybe the biggest question mark going in, as Brandon Bussey drove them here. Is he going to take them to the finish line?
This, to me, is the biggest question looming over the Carolina Hurricanes as they get ready to play. Who's going to be the goalie? Who's going to be the number 1 goalie? Is it going to be a 1A, 1B situation? Is it going to be a 1A, 1B, 1C situation? Yeah. Kochetkov is back and healthy. We thought he was out for the year. He's back and could be on the playoff roster. We could see him in the playoffs. But who does Rod Brind'Amour turn to start game 1? Who does he turn to start game 7? If it gets to that, does he go with the old hand, the veteran Frederik Andersen, or does he go with Bussey, the guy who's 31 wins has sort of catapulted them this season? The great story. Well, obviously it'll depend on who's playing well, but I think that's the biggest question mark on this team.
I think you see it a little differently than I do. I think they go with Bussey to start. It's been his year. He's been the guy. It's been his story. And Frederik Andersen has had statistically one of the worst seasons of his career at 36 years old. Regardless, Anderson's not taking you all the way there. Even if you start with him to go, this is definitely going to be a 1A, 1B, or a baton toss handoff midway through the postseason run. And we've seen 1A, 1B, and 1C before. Kochetkov had to come in a year when Ranta and Frederik Andersen both got hurt. And even in every single season under Rod, at least in the 5 that I've been here, it's been a 2 goaltender system. So I think they give it to Bussy to start. And like we talked about the story, I mean, it's fastest goaltender ever to reach 10 wins, 15 wins, 20 wins, 25 wins. The statistics on the season are solid, but of late, there's been a little bit of just some kind of holes in the sieve a little bit. He's given up 3 goals or more 6 times in the last 11 games. Now, maybe some of that is, had they already clinched? Was all the top guys playing?
Right.
Like, if you really, like, splintered through it. I know Rod called the win to end the regular season one of the best of his season, where he only gave up 2 goals. So that gives you some optimism. But, like, it's also just, the guy's technically a rookie, right? Like, this is the different
He was
scenario.
on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
He was picked up on the waiver wire. I've equated him to a relief pitcher all year, right? You'll get these guys who are relief pitchers, maybe a failed starter. They cycle through a bunch of organizations, and then all of a sudden they have a 1.2 ERA, and they're lights out. They've got a theme song, and everyone's loving them. Now it's the 9th inning. Do you put him out there? Do you count on what he's done all season, or do you look at his pedigree and say, maybe he's our 7th inning guy? And so, look, I'm not taking anything away from Bussy, what he's been able to do, but I wonder if Rod Brind'Amour is going to say, give me the veteran. Give me the veteran. Give me the guy who I've been through the wars with, time and time again. Let me start. I just feel more comfortable with Anderson out there.
Well, I know Rod's going to love answering that question. We will ask it tomorrow's practice as we record this on Wednesday. The Hurricanes are a well-deserved day off.
And I don't mean to cut you off. I was going to say that, Rod Brind'Amour talked about how the season was a marathon, and now they're getting ready to enter the sprint. And we can dissect this team and what they've been able to do the last 7 years a lot. But that consistency, and you mentioned Bussy, he's been very consistent all year. That consistency game in and game out where they just grind people down, their system plays very well, their players are obviously very good, they rack up these wins, rack up these points. Now you get to the postseason and you're counting on that goalie, whether it's Bussy or Anderson, to make a save. You're counting on your forward to score a couple goals in a game where nobody can score. You're counting on somebody to win a face-off late in the game and get a goal, maybe through traffic on a power play. Like, individual brilliance is going to matter now in a way that during the regular season, I think the machine-like apparatus that the Hurricanes have built, and that's, I'm not taking anything away from what they've built because, 8 straight playoffs speak for themselves. Florida's not in the playoffs this year. They're not able to sustain it. But you get to the postseason, I think you got to find those moments of brilliance from individual players.
Yeah, and this is the age-old debate with the Hurricanes, and a tired one. Does Rod Brind'Amour's system work in the playoffs? And every year, this gets brought up by the national media. It gets oversimplified. And I know locally, the stance has been from Rod and from the Hurricanes is that everybody is trying to play some degree of this style. Who wouldn't want to outshoot your opponent?
Right.
Who wouldn't want to limit their shots? Who wouldn't want to possess the puck?
Right.
Be great in 5-on-5 and not rely exclusively on the power play. I think where maybe the flaws in the machine a little bit with it is that a player like Marty Necas, who couldn't quite find his footing here despite just having eye-popping talent, goes to Colorado in the Mikko Rantanen trade and has a 100-point season. And you look at the Hurricanes, you got to go down to Sebastian Aho with 80 points, 25th in the league. And it's similar with their goal scorers as well. But I think what this team has that some of the other teams haven't had is that true depth of scoring. And a lot of these guys right now are A, healthy, and B, having career years. Now, Aho, he's Mr. Consistent. Was this a career year? No, but it was basically what he does every single season. But as far as the guys that did, Nikolai Ehlers, a offseason acquisition from Winnipeg, most points ever, most goals since 21-22. Svechnikov, returning to his form pre-ACL injury, has a 30-goal season. Most points of his career. No, this is actually a career year. I've written down here. Most points of career, most goals of his career. And he tore his ACL in 2023. And you kind of go down the list. Seth Jarvis would have had a career season if he didn't miss a significant chunk of games. Jackson Blake has continued his trajectory. The defense, Gostisbehere has contributed on the offensive end. And Alexander Nikishin, as well as Keandre Miller. So they've rebuilt the defense on the fly the last couple seasons with that offensive focus that they had a few years ago. And then, the offense is just loaded with maybe not 40 goal scorers, but they got a handful of 20 and 30 ones.
Yeah, 7 players, 20 goals or more. And what I think, when they went into the playoffs these last few years, it always felt like maybe they're a little short. Mm-hmm. This year, it feels like the depth that Eric Tolsky, and I think he deserves some of the credit, has been able to build. The guys coming up from the AHL, in knock on wood, they don't have to use them, but some of those guys got good experience too at the end of the year. It feels like the depth they've built with this roster, with all the forwards, with all the defensemen, is enough. Whereas I think in previous years, you felt like, oh man, like they might get through, they might win a lot of games in the playoffs, but it doesn't feel like they quite have enough. I think with the additions in the offseason, with its continued growth of some of their younger players, it really feels like this team has enough to get it done.
And they have enough to sustain one key injury probably.
Right.
Which is going to happen, whether it's like out for the playoffs or out for a couple games. It remains to be seen. And we've seen this the last few years. You've got Andrei Svechnikov, who tears his ACL in March, misses a postseason run that ends in the Eastern Conference Final. You have Brett Pesce basically playing through I can't remember what it was. It was like a broken shin or
lower
foot.
Body injury. Yeah. It was a lower body injury.
You have Seth Jarvis admitting he's playing through a torn labrum. One of the best days of the year is the exit interviews when you find out all the injuries these guys had. Teuvo Teravainen breaking his hand and coming back. And then last year, Nikishin, as you mentioned, having to come up and play a key role because Jalen Chatfield's dealing with an injury, and just how much that affected Carolina and what they were able to do. This year, it seems like the guys in the AHL, and Rod talked about this, as they continue to win games down the stretch against teams trying to get into the postseason, their AHL guys were contributing in a big way.
Remember last year, they were playing 2 rookie defensemen in important games, and Brendan Moore's like, well, they did okay. They did okay for being rookies, but not, up to the level that they would have. Florida, their nemesis, not in these postseasons. But you mentioned injuries, right? Brady Tkachuk, they've got to get through another Tkachuk. He plays for Ottawa. Yeah. Came up lame in the last game of the season, right? He said he lost his vision for a second after taking a big hit. What's his status moving forward? We know in these grueling 7-game series, people are going to get hurt. And maybe this is the year Carolina skates through, doesn't get those kinds of injuries. Maybe it's the other teams that have to deal with them. But I also think they have enough depth to hopefully get through some of those as well. It does feel like when you start adding it all together that maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Bracket luck, injury luck, and then just the institutional knowledge and experience of a team that has been to the playoffs 8 straight years. And yeah, there's been some new pieces, some new players, but the coaching staff, largely the same. The core of Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Jacob Slavin, Jordan Stahl, Jordan Martinook, that's the core. Those guys have been through these battle scars, and I've been in all these locker rooms having to see them, only one team gets to win the final game of the season, and it's always so heartbreaking to see these guys go out, and in some ways embarrassing fashion that just didn't seem to do this team's character justice, the way they've been kind of outshined by New York and by Florida. So, is this the time when that transcends, when all those years and all those battle scars shine through in a year when New York isn't in it, Florida isn't in it, but Tampa, who also has a core that's been to the playoffs all these years in a row, but also won the Cup multiple times, is potentially waiting for them in the Eastern Conference Final.
Look, and this may be the perspective that we have from being here in Raleigh, but it feels like this core, to make the playoffs 8 straight times, to make the Eastern Conference Finals, I think 3 times in that period, it feels like this team, for that sustained run, deserves it. It deserves to get some of the luck. It deserves to make that long run and get to the finals. The way they've built this team, they've protected their cap space, they've added pieces, they've taken big swings, they've signed the core. They've done it exactly how you'd want to do it. Mm-hmm. They've gotten those battle scars. It does feel like maybe this is the year that it all comes together. They get the break, they get the bounce, and they make it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, Eric Tolsky, to his credit, has built this along with Dundon and Brind'Amour to sustain success. But eventually, you can only lose so many times together before you kind of have to break things up. I'm not saying that's happening next year. They're all kind of situated pretty well contractually, but this certainly feels like It might be not now or never. I don't want to say that definitively because they could make some big move next season, but it certainly feels like things might not line up this way for Carolina ever again.
And the question already out there is, if they don't make it, is it a failure? I don't think it's a failure. It's a disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, not making the Stanley Cup Finals is a failure. You won the Eastern Conference regular season for the first time. You had the most points in the league. You battled through all the injuries that we talked about. You had to find a waiver wire goaltender to, have this kind of miraculous season in many ways. Like, this season's a success. You go out in the first round, okay, we'll change that conversation. But you make it a deep run. You're in the Eastern Conference Finals again. I don't think failure is the right word.
We will have that podcast when we cross that road, and hopefully it's not for another couple months because the playoffs are not ending. They are just beginning. Brian Murphy and I, Chris Lee, ready to hit the locker rooms pretty much every day from here on out. March Madness is over. The Stanley Cup playoffs are about to begin. For Brian Murphy, I'm Pat Welter. We'll be covering the Canes on all the platforms here on WRAL. So stick with us, follow us on social media, and we'll try to do our best for you as well as the Canes on the ice.